old posts. I saw that you had said that you had done this, and so
Yeah.
I guess first off, tell me how that looks when you did it previously.
Yeah. So, my I've purchased 3 Subtos this year. The first 2 were both VA loans. I was direct to seller. It was people that I knew personally. But it was like it was an opportunity presented itself. I'm like, hey, you know, the first one, they had it listed for like 3 months. They couldn't sell it. You could, when you looked on Zillow, you could see the price dropping like every month as their mortgage balance dropped, and I was just like, okay, that's miserable.
Mm.
And it was priced exactly at what the comps put it at, but because of the rate environment, it's just 250 today is not 250 2 years ago. As far as cost, right? And so I'm like, okay, well, how can I help, right? So I asked him what his rate was, and this is my buddy. I was at Fort Bragg with him. I was like, hey, what's your rate? What's your payment? I'm like, would you let me buy this with the mortgage kind of staying in place, right? He's like, well, I've got a couple offers like that. Agent wasn't really sure about it. I'm like, well, let me hop on a call with y'all and kind of walk through it. And so, I mean, taking a VA loan sub two is almost no different than taking any other loan sub two, whether it's conventional or FHA. There's a couple more objections with a VA loan than with an FHA loan, or just different objections. And there's more than with a conventional. But you can take pretty much anything with a loan on it sub two. I've heard there's certain loans in like Utah where like they're very, very strict about checking who lives in the property. And if they find out that you're renting the property out or anything like that, or whoever's on the loan um isn't the person living there, they'll call the loan due. But that's not a VA loan, it's like a Utah HUD kind of thing. But yeah, I mean, so as far as like what it looks like, it looks the same as pretty much anything else, right? You get your power of attorney to talk to the lender, you get your power of attorney to talk to the insurance, you take whatever steps you're going to take to prevent the loan from being called due, whether that's moving it into a trust or whatever, or not, do what you want. Um, the I think the biggest thing is that a lot of people, like, there's something mysterious about the VA, right?
Yeah.
The entitlement is the big objection that people get, because like a lot of like service members, they'll buy a house with their VA loan, they'll be at 0% down, and then they'll get orders a year or two later. And if they bought it in 2021 and they're moving in 2023, well, there's no issue. If they bought it in 2023 and they're moving in 2024, well, now there's a problem because the appreciation kind of stopped, right? The rates kind of capped out, appreciation capped out. And so people that bought their home 3 years ago are in a great place. I'm selling a house right now, sub two, or not sub two. It's an option. But I bought it with my VA loan and I'm comfortable with selling it sub two. As a knowledgeable seller, not a motivated seller. But there's a lot of situations where service members are stuck. They might have like a 5 or 6% rate if they bought in the last 2 years.
Yeah.
And they have no equity. And I kind of feel like a VA loan is a little bit of a trap, for people that don't understand it. I didn't understand it when I bought my first house. It's a little bit of a trap because you might not have equity when it comes time to move, and if you can't cash flow it, well, it's like, what do you do now, right? You're going to write a check at closing, or you're going to negative cash flow $200 to $300 a month on trying to rent it out, right? And so that's kind of the situation with VA loans. And so a lot of people are finding these like 4 and 5% VA loans right now, where there's like no equity, or extremely low equity, that they can't sell it, they can't rent it. What do they do? Or they don't want to rent it. A lot of service members, it's really interesting. They'll buy a house because they don't want to pay rent, but then they also, like, they don't want to rent the house out when they leave, and so they're like, okay, I'm just going to sell it now and get my entitlement back, get the loan off, and then go buy one somewhere else. So that's what a lot of them are doing. But you're seeing these 4 and 5% VA loans that are just out there with no equity. And I mean, they're assumable. All VA loans are assumable. But I mean, you can't sell it otherwise, right?
Right.
There's no equity, there's no cash to seller. Usually there's just like, hey, like, this loan is here and I can't get rid of it. And so like I mean, the objections with taking a VA loan sub 2 or selling a VA loan sub 2 are pretty much the same as any other loan. It's like, well, it's still on my credit, so that's dangerous, and it's still on my debt to income, and that makes it so it's harder for me to get a new loan. And those are the same kind of with every home loan that exists that you're buying sub 2. It's right. It's like if you're buying a sub 2 from somebody that's not already like in arrears, their credit isn't already trashed. They're like, well, what about my credit, and what about my ability to buy a new house? And one of the main myths that I see people have like as a belief is that you can only have one VA loan, which is false, right? So I have 3 of my own that I bought with my own VA entitlement. All of them were 0% down. The third one is the third one that I live in right now. That's the one where it's like, oh yeah, VA loans are a trap now. Yeah, I fell into it. Not even gonna lie, and that's fine. I learned everything afterwards. But the first 2 are rentals. One of them is the one that I'm considering selling as a sub 2. And I have 3, right? And so with VA loans, there's actually like an entitlement amount that you're allowed to you're allowed to go get a VA loan for 0% down up to a certain dollar amount. And so it's not based on how many loans you have or anything like that. I mean, theoretically, depending on like where you got stationed, you could have like 5 VA loans. That'd be a little crazy to stay in like super low like cost areas, but I mean you could do it, right? My first 2 were like the purchase price was like 162 and 160. I could have like 5 VA loans if I like stayed up in Fayetteville. So I mean that's kind of like what it is, right? So the main thing is the entitlement, and people are getting a little bit more educated now because they're trying to figure out ways to move these houses. Even agents are having the same issue. They're trying to figure out ways to move these houses that have no equity. Nobody wants their seller to write a check at closing, but like when it comes down to it, it's like you got to get paid, right? The broker's going to take their fee. And so one of the things that people are getting more educated on is what is the entitlement. And so with the VA entitlement, it's based on geographical area. In the Southeast, in most places, the entitlement is capped at about I think it's like 720 to 750 right now. And so like up to $750-ish thousand, you can have theoretically unlimited VA loans, right? It's limited by that dollar amount.
Wow.
If you go past that, then it's not that you can't get a VA loan, it's that you can't get a 0% VA loan. And it basically turns into like a conventional loan when it goes beyond that point. So the entitlement is what a lot of people get hung up on, especially if it's my credit's fine, if my credit's fine, I have no real pain other than I don't want to pay 2 mortgages forever, right? In that situation, it's like, well, I don't want to pay 2 mortgages forever, but I want to be able to buy another house. I want to be able to move to my next duty station, buy a house to live in because I got 2 big dogs, because I'm a soldier and I have 2 big dogs. That's what we do. I want to be able to buy a new house with a yard and not have to worry about like landlord or pet deposit or whatever. So how do I do that, right? It's like, well, you have, depending on what your location is, you probably have enough entitlement left to just go buy another house anyways. I moved from Fort Bragg it's Fort Liberty now, to Fort Gordon or Fort Eisenhower. I was able to buy 2 houses while I was at Fort Bragg and buy a third one when I got down here to Augusta. I might actually be able to do the same thing if I moved to like Fort, I think they named it Fort Johnson. It used to be Fort Polk. Probably could do the same thing, could buy another one based on like the cost of living in the area. And so entitlement it's important to know how much they have, and they can send a letter to the VA saying, hey, how much entitlement do I have? Or you can probably find a calculator that'll tell you, or you can just look up online like, hey, what is the entitlement for the area, and subtract what they owe on their loan, and that's going to give you a close enough number to say, hey, if you owe 150 on this house or 200 on this house, and you move to anywhere else, you'll have $400,000 left over, $500,000 of entitlement to go buy another house, right? So that's one thing, and that defeats the I want my entitlement back question. another big one, and this probably applies more to service members, is like, hey, my credit's fine right now. I have a secret or a top secret security clearance. I need to be able to protect my credit, right? Because if I start having missed mortgage payments or late mortgage payments, this loan goes into default. One, like I lose my VA entitlement if I start going into default on these loans that are in my name. And two, it's going to affect my security clearance because they do like regular reinvestigation, not like a full investigation, but they're going to, they do their background and their credit checks every couple months, couple years, depending on what the time frame is. And they're going to see like, oh, you have like a bunch of missed payments on this mortgage. What's going on? And that's going to affect their security clearance, their ability to get jobs, their ability to, promote and everything like that. So that's like probably the biggest, most valid objection that exists pretty much with anybody, right? Whether you're buying FHA, conventional, if you're taking a property sub two, the biggest objection is like, okay, I might lose money. Okay. But like, what about my credit? And so for that one, that's, you kind of just have to address it as the same way you would any other situations. Like, well, we're going to be using this as a business property. This is how much we're going to rent it for. This is how we know for sure. We're going to set up loan servicing. We're going to, maybe we put 1 or 2 months of holding costs in escrow just forever pay. I remember watching a video with Pace Morby where he said that he did that to assuage that concern with the sellers. Like, well, what if I have to take the property back? How long, how am I going to pay for it? He's like, well, how long do you think it would take you to sell? Oh, a couple months. Okay, well, we're going to just leave 3 months of holding costs in escrow or something. That's an option, right? There's lots of ways to figure it out. But ultimately that's going to be the biggest objection. That's the hardest one to overcome, is like, well, what if you miss payments? Like, I don't know what to tell you. That's the biggest thing. But yeah, I mean, the entitlement is like probably the biggest myth that you'll run into, is that you can only have one VA loan. Like I said, it's theoretically unlimited up to whatever dollar amount. Now, depending on the market, that dollar amount goes up, but you probably can't get away with like buying a bunch of properties in that market, right? So like Hawaii, Colorado Springs area, California, you can get it's like basically a jumbo loan where the cost of living is so high that you're spending $700,000 on like a 4-bed, 2-bath, 1,600, 2,000 square foot house. Which in my market, I'm flipping a house here in Augusta that is like 1,600 square feet or so, and it's I got it for like 112, which is like, completely different scales of like dollars, right? So but yeah, so I mean that's kind of like the gist. Like I said, it kind of goes the same as any other sub two, but you're dealing with, a lot of times you are dealing with people who's like, their motivation is, I don't want to pay 2 mortgages forever, and I can't sell it because I have zero. I'll cut a check at closing. That's the biggest motivation you're likely to see with VA loans. Every now and then you'll catch like somebody that was in arrears, or you'll have somebody that maybe they aren't currently serving, so they're not getting VAH, and so they're just like doing like regular life, like regular civilians, and they have arrears and everything like that. But a lot of times, if it's a newer VA loan in the last couple of years, you're near a military base, it's gonna be a super low equity, maybe negative equity. Both of the sub twos that I bought this year, basically negative equity. I gave both sellers $5,000 cash. I paid closing costs. The purchase price, when you added in $5,000 cash, probably came out to like 5% above whatever the house is actually worth, just because it's like you got to close. And I had good exit strategies for them that like I cash flow fine on them, but that's only because I knew how, right? A lot of times they won't cash flow as like a regular long-term rental in these super low equity situations, and that's why they're selling. Like they'll sit on it for 3 months waiting for it to sell. I should say we, like I have VA loans too, right? But sit on it for 3 months waiting for it to sell. It won't sell. Okay, well, what if we rented it out for a little while until we had more equity? It's like, oh, well, market rent is $2,000 and your monthly payment is $1,900, and property management is going to cost you 10%. And so each month you're going to bring in $1,800 for rent. And then, oh, now your HVAC got picked up and turned upside down by a hurricane. And that happened to me just now, like a week ago. So, which is like miserable for a long-term rental. It's like, well, there goes 3 years of like theoretical profit, right? So yeah. Do you have any questions, Bayne?
Yeah, actually.
I went through like a lot really fast. So.
No. That all makes sense to me.
Mhm.
The one particular deal I'm talking about, it is one of those situations that you said, like, zero equity. He's got like a 4.75 interest rate, he thinks, but
Nice.
it's like it's gonna like break even, if not lose money, as a long-term rental. So I'm wondering what kind of exits we can do to actually make this profitable for whoever ends up buying it, whether that's us or someone else.
Sure. Are you okay sharing the address? I don't want to like circumvent
Yeah,
or anything. But,
Let's not play this game.
I know, Garret. I saw that whole thing. I was like, oh my gosh, that was funny.
I generally like trust people in sub too, generally, just because like what are you gonna do? Like, you're really gonna
what are you gonna do?
Like, I don't know.
You're gonna get kicked out for this one deal, yeah.
Here, I'm gonna post it
Okay. Cool.
in sorry, not Pine Castle, Madison, Alabama.
Gotcha. Oh, this is near like Fort Rucker. It's got to be, right?
I do not know.
The fact that you said that says probably yes.
Okay. Okay, so I'm looking at it on Privy right now. The under mortgage history, it says it's 4%, which isn't bad.
I think he said his pity was like almost 2,000 exactly, like 1992 or something.
Okay. Yeah. And what, it's a 1,650 square foot house, and if you look at all the other 1,650 square foot houses, they're all selling for, or they've all sold for pretty much right there. There was a 292 comp from January. You go up 100 square feet and you get 315 in March. Yeah, so I mean, that's exactly what the situation is. And then for rents, you said his pity was what?
His pity is like 1992.
Oh,
Rents at like 1850, 19, like around there. So
yeah, that comp's out. Yeah, it would be a tough one. Is this in an HOA? It doesn't look like an HOA house.
I don't think so.
Okay, so I mean, different exit strategies. You could, I mean, you do short-term rental, mid-term rental, obviously pad split. It's 3 beds. You could probably do like mid-term to nurses or something. I don't know what the hospital or like university situation is like there in Huntsville. I would say, I mean, it wouldn't be good as a long-term rental, at least as a cash flow type of property. If you're trying to dispo it to somebody that just needed like something to cut their taxes down for the year, that might work. Or if you're looking to dispo it to like an owner occupant, I mean, you could advertise this as assumable, because all VA loans are assumable, and there's a 45-day like time frame where, like, because FHA loans are assumable, but they can take forever, and a lot of banks just like drag their feet on it. For this one, because it's a VA loan, the VA sets a limit on how long it can take to close, and that's probably in place to protect service members, because they have to move. The Army told them, the Navy told them, the Air Force told them, hey, you're going to go somewhere else now. So you can't really just like drag your feet on it. So you could probably wholesale, if you bought it sub 2 and then try to resell it on market as like an assumable, you might be able to get some traction. I don't know. Does the Zillow listing say that it is? Oh, is it listed at all right now?
I don't think it's listed.
Okay. So yeah, so you could list it on the MLS as like, hey, this has an assumable 4% loan, and I mean that's probably what the seller should do, because that'll at least get people to say, okay, well, I could buy this with a 6% interest rate, or I could buy this with a 4% interest rate, and there's so little equity in it anyways that they're not going to have to bring a lot of cash to closing. They're not going to have to, you know, the seller will likely want the buyer to cover closing costs, so that, you know, like I said, nobody likes to write a check at closing when you're trying to sell a house. So if you, that's probably what I would say is the best strategy, or do some kind of like a contract for deed where you're just like, hey, just let me take over the payments, and then you just go and put it on the MLS. You know, you can do something like that, and you just add 2 to 3K on top for a fee, or 3K, 4K, 5K, whatever you want to add on top, whatever like kind of keeps the deal alive. And then list it on the MLS as a, like, hey, this has an assumable 4% interest VA loan on it. Assuming the veteran doesn't need their entitlement back, which, like I said, you can have like a whole bunch of loans, but if they already have a whole bunch of loans, it's like, well, maybe they do need some of their entitlement back. But they can get it back, even in an assumption. If somebody assumes a VA loan, if they are a veteran that has VA entitlement and they assume the loan and they use their VA entitlement, there's a lot of that was like a lot of stuff, but veteran using their VA entitlement to assume a VA loan, then the VA entitlement for the seller gets released.
Mhm.
Anybody can assume a VA loan. That's another myth that people don't like realize, is that anybody can assume a VA loan. You still have to go qualify, right, for like the loan itself. But the VA backing is fine. Like anybody can assume it. You can go assume this 4% VA loan if you want. And the VA entitlement that created the loan in the first place stays tied up to that property, to that loan, until it's satisfied. So whether that means 5 years down the line you refinance, or you sell normal, because in 5 years presumably there's actually equity in the property. So those are two other kind of notes about, like, okay, the entitlement thing is like, well, maybe you don't need it right now, but you need it in 5 years. Well, I'll refinance or sell in 5 years. Maybe you're, yeah.
So their entitlement stays locked up unless another service member uses their entitlement to assume the loan. So
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, exactly. So if I went and I assumed this loan, I could use my VA entitlement. There's probably not enough left to do it on this one, but on a smaller purchase price, I probably could. I could use my VA entitlement and to assume that loan, and then the seller's entitlement gets released. So he gets to go buy $750,000 worth of house somewhere else.
Got it.
If I don't use, I could be a veteran with entitlement and go and assume this loan without using my entitlement, like right now where I have none left because I used it all. I could go and buy this house, assume the loan without using my entitlement, and then his stays tied up in that property.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
I think the biggest issue with him is, and the reason why it's not on the market, I remembered why, he has to leave in like 2 or 3 weeks, and he just found out like, Monday or like last Monday or something.
Do you know where he's going?
He's staying in the state. I can't remember exactly where he's going. But he said he's not looking to buy a new house like for like 6 to 12 months. But I told him there's probably ways we can, reduce that on his DTI. But I didn't go too much further into it. I just didn't know where we were. So
Okay.
Cool.
I don't actually, looking at the map, I don't think he's at Fort Rucker. It doesn't matter. Yeah, that's a really fast turnaround.
Yeah.
If you knew whether he was coming back or not right afterwards, I would say like, hey, maybe he's going to like a school or something, and he's coming back after that. And if that was the case, I would say it's probably in his best interest to just like rent it for 6 months, take the L on a couple $100 and come back.
Yeah.
If he's not coming back, I would say probably that contract for deed or just listing it. I mean, he doesn't really have a ton of options as far as like getting rid of it. Because I mean, you probably don't want to pay closing costs to assume it and then go turn around and pay commission to an agent to sell it, right? And like reassume it, have somebody else come and assume it. I mean, it's definitely a tough one. I would say if there's, depending on like the market there, I don't really know anything about. I don't know a lot about Alabama, honestly.
Yeah.
It's not really a market that I watch. But like I said, you could probably get away with like midterm or short-term rental depending on what's going on in the area. If there's like universities or something, you can get away with co-living or sober living. Sober living might be good if you have experience with that, or the operator has experience with that. A lot of people, there's a lot of people taking on these higher interest rate loans. I say higher interest rate, higher pity loans. Because four's a great interest rate, right? Like that's not a terrible interest rate at all. But it's the PITI is what really counts, right? But a lot of people who have experience with operating midterm or short term or co-living or sober living or any of those like kind of like niche exit strategies, like they're hunting for those lower interest rate deals, even if it's a higher PITI, because they're not going off of, hey, what if I have to long-term rent this, because that's not their plan at all. They are not planning to long-term rent it at all, right? So if you have like a buyer's list that includes a lot of operators like that, then I would say, hey, just kind of push out the specs, if you will, to them and say, hey, what would you think of this? And then if they like it, put it under contract. If they don't like it, I mean, this guy, he's either going to eat $200 a month trying to rent this, or he's going to have to sell it. Is kind of like where he's at, right? And that's exactly where the sellers on both of my properties that I bought sub to this year from that were VA loans. Like I said, I knew them both. I knew both sellers personally. The first one, it was listed for like 3 months, and basically the $5K cash I gave him at closing was like paying back those 3 mortgage payments. Is what he got out of it, right? Was like great for him. Fine for me. I'm okay with it. But the second one, it wasn't listed at all. Somebody came up to me at work and was like, hey, like, what do you think this would rent for? Do you know any like good property management? Because I talk about real estate at work. And I was like, oh yeah, let me look at it. And I was like, well, this one kind of sucks to rent out. You guys are gonna lose, like, if you're gonna self-manage, you'll break even if you're lucky and you don't have a hurricane flip your HVAC over. That's the one that flipped it over during the hurricane. But and if you're not lucky, you're gonna have like repairs and you're gonna have to pay out of pocket and you're not gonna make money. But I had an exit strategy, kind of a niche exit strategy, like specific to Augusta. And I was like, hey, let me take this over. I'll make these payments. I will send you screenshots of like the bank account that the money's gonna be coming in and out of. Like you'll see it, right? Like, so it's all good. And everything went fine after that, right? They forgot to turn off utilities and then they forgot to go pay the utility after they turned it off because they had never sold a house before, and like, oh man, that sucks. Sorry guys. I turned the utilities on. Like you got to go pay it. But
hey guys, I got a slide. Somebody just got to my house. One thing I wanted to mention, Bayne, maybe you can have this conversation with him as well, was we have a seller that potentially wants to turn around and put their money into something as a PML. I don't yet have the experience to be able to comfortably or confidently do that, but I know that you do. So I thought there might be some connection points that we can make that happen too. So Bayne, if you want to give him a rundown on that situation, I'll leave the note taker thing in here. So I'll catch up with however it plays out later.
Cool. Yeah, no, that'd be super cool.
Appreciate you guys.
All right, thanks, Garrett.
Yeah. Yeah, this other deal we're looking at is I want to say it's 2 houses that he maybe has like 150,000 left on, and they're worth like 4-ish. So he's got about 250 equity-ish. But he's not looking to sell them. But he was like, hey, like I want to invest. I want to buy more houses. I want to, if you can figure something out where we could pull that money out. My first thought goes to like a HELOC, right? Like you pull it out with a HELOC at whatever interest rate, and if you can reinvest that at a higher interest rate, I guess that's your return. He's open to like lending on flips or lending or like literally getting in as maybe a PMP. I've never dealt with this situation, so yeah, we were just kind of looking around, seeing what people have done.
Yeah. So I haven't turned any of my sellers into PMLs. All my sellers have been like I said, zero equity. I gave them money at closing because there was nothing in the property. But I mean, I'm collecting deals all the time or getting sent deals all the time for people looking for PMLs because like that's kind of my avatar is like capital raiser, connector, whatever. And so if they're looking for, are they trying to sell? They're trying to sell.
They're not.
Right?
They're trying to keep their property.
Okay.
And then pull their equity out and invest it.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Yeah. So as far as like strategies for that, I would say, I mean, they could use it as cross collateral. Like you can get higher leverage on a property you're going to go buy if you have like 250K in equity in this other property. It's like, well, hey, it's like collateralize 100K against this one, but use it on the property I'm trying to actually buy. That's one way to do it. They could get a HELOC. They could get a HE loan. They could refinance.
What's a HE loan?
It's the same thing as a HELOC, except it's like a lump sum, whereas a HELOC is technically a line of credit that you can like put money in and out of, and then it like just disappears after a while. Whereas a HE loan is like it's like a term loan. The same. It's like a regular personal loan, but it's like collateralized and lower interest rate usually. Relative to like a regular term loan. So yeah, I mean those are 2 like normal options. Like those are gonna be like full doc kind of loans. You're gonna show your tax returns and stuff like that. Are they like in the creative finance community?
I don't think so. I haven't gotten a lot of information. This is kind of like from one of our students that like brought a deal and we're like, what do I do with this? I'm like,
Sure.
I don't know. So yeah, we're kind of trying to figure out what, but it sounds like they're open to creative things because he's like, well, I'm trying to do this. Like, what can you do?
Yeah. The biggest concern I would see with taking a HELOC or a HE loan is that a lot of times people will take loans like that and then they'll go and they'll try to buy a rental property with that money or do something else. And the rate the monthly payment on their HELOC or HE loan is not lower than is lower than the return, or is higher than the return on whatever project they went to go put it in, right? So like, oh, I'm going to take a 50K loan against my second loan against my house. I'm going to go buy a duplex, and then they put that money into a duplex, and their monthly payment on the 50K is $300, and the duplex they didn't know anything about comping or like calculating return on investment, anything like that, and then now it looks like on their duplex they're cash flowing like $400 a month, and then they actually are negative cash flowing like $200 a month, and they're like, this life sucks. That would be like my biggest like kind of thing to watch out for if I was him. I really like the collateral idea is really good in the creative finance space because there's a lot of times people are looking for like cross collateral or are open to doing like, okay, sure, I'll do 100% loan to value on such and such, but I want cross collateral because obviously you don't want to be 100% loan to cost and then the property is not actually now you're covering closing costs, and it's like, well, I'm now upside down technically. So those are some options. Pulling equity out of a house is hard. Home equity agreements are an option. They're not great. You typically don't really want to hold on to them, especially if you expect the house to appreciate.
Can you explain that a little more?
The home equity agreements.
Yeah.
So it's you're selling part, like if your house is 100%, right? Here's your house, and you got 100% of house, and it belongs to my house belongs to Jack 100%. And then I end up with it's worth 300 and I owe 200. I could get what's called a home equity agreement for like a certain percentage of my equity in the house for like 50K, right? So I sell part of my equity in my house for 50K. In 2 years, my house is now worth 500K. That home equity agreement has increased in size to like 70K because it was like I don't know, 40% or 60% or whatever the that math comes out to. That home equity agreement is now worth like a whole lot more to whoever gave me that money in the first place. And a lot of banks are doing this as like an alternative to a HELOC, because I mean there's no payment on it. It's you don't owe money. It's just that when you go to sell your house, you're going to be getting a lot less than you thought, right? Or when you go to refinance, you're going to get a lot less than you thought. So it especially with like appreciation built in. So home equity agreements are an option if you're gonna. I think they would be great for doing like flips. You do a home equity agreement, you unlock like 50K cash, you go do your flip, you put that 50K cash back, and now you have 50K cash from doing the flip, or 30K cash from doing the flip, and then you just go buy a smaller flip to build on it. Right? Or you keep recycling. As long as you're making more money than your house is increasing in value, then it works out fine, right? But I would say that's probably the best option, because at least then there's no payment on it, right? Like because it can't the home equity agreement can't increase in value faster than your house,
Right.
Because it's based entirely on the equity on the house. So that's another option. Another thing, and this is really, if they're gonna go buy like DSCR, like using a DSCR loan, they're gonna go buy a duplex or a threeplex, and they're gonna be a real estate investor that way. And they wanna find a way to bring on somebody else for their down payment, and like in a kind of a temporary kind of fashion. I've been experimenting with selling equity, but on a contract for deeds, so that there's no short-term capital gains implication for the lender, if you will. Because really it's like he's lending me 40K at whatever interest rate, and I give it back to cancel the contract for deed. But if I default, then the property just automatically goes to him because he bought the house. So I mean, I've been experimenting with it. I haven't like nailed down what all that paperwork has to look like, so I don't want to like, if you do it, you're full risk to whoever's doing it. I just happened to get away with it with my neighbor because my lender needed to see that I sold the property to get money, not that he was lending to me. Which is fine. I'm like, whatever, I'll sell him my equity in this house. And then I'll buy it back when the project's done. So like, cool. But those are probably like the main options that I would say are available. You've got a HELOC or a HELoan, a refinance. Home equity agreement is probably depending on like the length of time that he expects the money to be tied up, I would say home equity agreement might be the most agreeable. It won't go up to 100%, right? Nothing will. You can probably get up to like 80, 85%. I was talking to a broker that I have worked with previously, and she said that she can get HELOCs up to 90% loan to value. I don't know how true that is. I'm kind of asking her about it right now. Because I want to like, it's like I'm selling this house up in Fayetteville, but if I can just get 90% loan to value on it with a HELOC, that that's 50K right there. I'll take 50K over 60. That's fine. I'll take 50K and rent it back out. Who cares? So I'm working with whatever that's going to look like, but those are like the main options. If they're going to keep the property and they want money out of the house, selling part of the house, that's your home equity agreement, or collateralizing the house against the regular HELOC or HELOAN, or using the house as cross collateral for a private lender to come in and buy houses with them, right? Or buy properties with them. That's or refinance, right? That's kind of the options. You can refinance up to like 95% with a conventional. You're gonna be paying PMI and stuff, but I mean, like, if you really want to. And with a VA loan, you can refinance up to 100% with a interest rate reduction loan. So that's kind of cool too. That, when you refinance up to 100% from wherever you're at, your loan balance goes up. So you might have a higher payment, but whatever.
Right.
So
cool, man. Well, yeah, thank you for walking me through all that. What do you need in your business? Like, how can I help you?
Yeah. My main thing. So I've been partnering a lot with another Gator. His name's Dan. I've been partnering a lot with him on connecting deals and getting private money into deals that deserve private money. And my main thing is that, like, my side of that is the private money lender side. So I'm always talking with people that want to do private money lending or are doing private money lending, private money partnerships, stuff like that. And so, if you have PMLs that are looking for somewhere to put their money, or you have somebody interested, you could send them my way. Alternatively, if you guys have a deal that you're looking for a PML, or if you see somebody looking for a PML, if you send them my way, that also helps, right? Because, like, I'm mostly on the lender side, but I'm still doing borrower side, because if you only ever talk to lenders, you're not going to get anything done either. You got to be a bridge, not like half of a bridge that only talks to one side. So
yeah. Gotcha.
Yeah. What about you guys? I know we just kind of went through like the VA loan stuff. But what are y'all looking for? Because I've talked with Garret before, and we never actually got a chance to schedule our follow-up call. But I think we're going to talk a little bit about like capital raising at some point. But what are you guys looking for?
Yeah, I think capital raising. Garrett's got kind of like a bigger picture on his side. He's kind of just pulled me in as like, I don't know, team lead or something. But I kind of have my own short-term rental business. So I personally am looking to get into bigger deals and like get an equity piece and like actually like hold the deals.
Right.
So yeah, capital. We'll probably need capital, especially.
So are you mostly wholesaling right now?
50-50. So okay. Yeah, some of them wholesale, but we are trying to like hold deals.
Right. So you're wholesaling when you're short on capital, and you're holding when you have capital to hold.
Yeah. Yeah.
Cool.
The typical path.
Yeah. What markets are you guys focused in?
I'm focused in Pennsylvania and Florida. But I think we have like Texas, Alabama, North Carolina, and there's a couple other states. So like kind of in the South area.
Okay. Well, if you guys need like boots on the ground or something, in like anywhere within like an hour of Augusta or farther, I can get out there on weekends. Charlotte, Charlotte, Atlanta, Savannah, they're all like 2 hours away from me. Columbia's an hour away. Charleston, 2 hours. So if you guys are looking for like boots on the ground for anything in like the Georgia, South Carolina area, let me know. And even if I can't get to it, I know a lot of folks in the Southeast that are local to like pretty big markets. I have people in Fort Myers. I have people in Jacksonville. I have people in like Fayetteville, North Carolina, all around like Georgia, South Carolina. So yeah, I'm happy to help with that as well.
Awesome. Yeah. Thank you.
Cool.
Yeah, I'll let you know what happens with this guy, and he might have some funds he's lending out. So we'll be in touch if he does something with that. So
cool. And if you need help with the guy in Alabama, also let me know. I'm happy to hop on a call with him. Sometimes like when people are explaining stuff, it helps to have like, oh, Jack is in the Army right now. He'll hop on the call and he'll connect that way and kind of explain things a little bit better, or a little bit the same way, but it's somebody that has a stronger connection to me, so that makes more sense. You know what I mean?
Yeah, so, for sure. Okay. Yeah. And then if you know anyone that's looking to buy in that area or like has done
Yeah.
something that's not long-term rent cash flow,
Mhm.
yeah, that would super help us out with that.
Sure. I'll keep an eye out for people that are looking in that area or asking about stuff in that area, because like definitely would love to help this guy, because I mean I would hate for him to just like lose $200 a month for long, because he has to long-term rent because he has no other exit strategy.
I mean, he's probably going to lose a couple grand up front, just like getting a renter in and stuff. So like,
yeah, exactly. Just the holding cost while he finds a tenant, you know.
Yeah, exactly. So
Cool.
yeah.
All right, man. Well, hey, it was this is a great call. Great talking with you. Great to meet you. And don't be a stranger.
Yeah. Nice
All
to
right.
meet you, Jack.
Yeah. Talk to you later. Bye.
That's it.